Duskmourn, House of Horrors is here, which means it's time to go down to your local game store for pre-release or to play in a Friday night Magic draft. But whether it's draft or pre-release sealed, for many Magic the Gathering players, exploring a new limited environment can be scarier than exploring a haunted house, even a haunted house from the 1980s. But fear not, dear viewer, I'm here to help with Tolarian Community College's comprehensive guide to Duskmourn Limited. Whether you're playing Duskmourn Sealed at your local pre-release or sitting down for a Duskmourn draft at your local Friday Night Magic, the best way to succeed at a brand new limited environment is to know a bit about the cards you'll see in your packs beforehand. This video will cover everything you need to know to enter your pre-release event or your first few drafts of Duskmourn Limited. The video is intended for players who already know how to draft or build a sealed deck, and will focus on strategies for the new Duskmourn set. If you're brand new to draft or sealed, you should check out our beginner's guide to the formats here and here. So whether you are going down to play in a Duskmourn pre-release or participate in a draft, this video has you covered with everything you need to know. So come, join me on a journey through the dark and chilling world of the 1980s. I mean Duskmourn, House of Horrors Limited. The first thing you need to know about a new limited environment are the various mechanics you'll see on the cards you open. The better you understand the keywords, the easier it will be to know what a card does at a quick glance, even if you've never seen that card before. There are several new mechanics in Duskmourn, a few of which are fun twists on pre-existing mechanics you might already recognize. Keywords. Rooms are enchantment split cards. You may cast either half of the room to have that room unlock as it enters play. At any time you could cast a sorcery, you may pay the unlock cost for the other half of the room to unlock its door. A room card on the battlefield only has the characteristics of the unlocked rooms. The locked half of the room is treated as though it doesn't exist. Rooms are like adventure cards in that they provide an inherent 2-for-1, provided you live long enough to unlock both doors. Manifest Dread is the latest iteration of the Manifest mechanic, originally introduced way back in Khan's block. To Manifest Dread, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one into your graveyard and the other into play face down as a 2/2 creature. The face down card can be turned face up at any time for its mana cost if it's a creature card. If you do, it will not trigger any enters effects that creature may have. Manifest Dread is significantly better than Manifest was, as it provides card selection and helps fuel graveyard strategies. Survival is another new ability word in Duskmourn. Creatures with survival trigger on your second main phase if they are tapped. This is a mechanic that encourages combat. Every survival creature is white or green except for one, Cynical Loner. Eerie is a keyword that is similar to Constellation from the Theros sets. Though instead of only triggering off enchantments entering, Eerie cards also trigger when you fully unlock a room. Impending is a keyword on the 5 Overlord Mythics, and is similar to the Suspend mechanic from Time Spiral block. A creature with Impending can be cast for a reduced mana cost. If you do, then the card enters as non-creature enchantments with time counters on them. At the beginning of your end step, remove a time counter from them. When the last one is removed, they become enchantment creatures. Finally, Delirium is a returning ability word in Duskmourn. Delirium is enabled when you have 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. Another important thing to know before you experience Duskmourn Limited is the archetypes that you can build around for each color pair. The more you understand about what any given color pair is trying to do, the better you'll be at recognizing inter-card synergies and building a deck that is more than the sum of its parts. Archetypes. Black-red is a sacrifice deck, as it often is. The twist with this set is you can also sacrifice enchantments to your sack outlets. The signpost uncommons are Disturbing Mirth and Sawblade's Skin Ripper. Disturbing Mirth plays double duty as a one-off sack outlet and sack fodder. It's a card that scales well with itself since you can sack your first copy to your second, and so on. If you're drafting and find yourself in red-black, you likely want to pick up as many copies of Disturbing spreading mirth as you can get your hands on. For sealed, of course, you'll just have to run as many copies as you have opened. Sawblade's Skin Ripper is a powerful, repeatable sack outlet and payoff in a single card. Keep in mind that Terramorphic Expanse counts towards your sacrificed permanents total for Sawblade's Skin Ripper's damage-dealing ability. Red-Green is a Delirium aggro deck. The signpost uncommons are Beastie Beatdown, a bite spell that gets significantly stronger when Delirium is turned on, and Wildfire Wickerfolk, a hasty threat with 2 card types that, surprise surprise, gets more powerful when Delirium is turned on. An aggro deck that wants to achieve Delirium has some inherent tension, as many of the strongest Delirium enablers in the set do not provide pressure on your opponent's life total. Look out for creatures that are also enchantments or artifacts, as well as those that surveil or loot away cards to help enable Delirium without taking any turns off from your onslaught. Manifest Dread cards also help with this, putting a 2/2 creature in play while hopefully finding a missing card type for your graveyard. The green-white deck is an assertive survival deck. Put survival creatures in play and consistently tap them for profit every turn. The signpost uncommons are Baseball Bat and Shrewd Storyteller. Baseball Bat is a powerful equipment that can help either tap down your opponent's blockers or even tap one of your own survival creatures without risking it in combat. Shrewd Storyteller is a well-stated 3-drop that grows one of your creatures each time it achieves its survival trigger. When building or drafting green-white, keep an eye out for cards that can tap your own creatures without them needing to enter combat. The white-blue deck is a mid-range deck that's built around the eerie mechanic. The signpost uncommons are Gremlin Tamer and Inquisitive Glimmer, 2 powerful 2-drops that reward you for filling your deck with enchantments. As best as you can, try to fill your deck exclusively with enchantments and cards that care about enchantments. Enchantment creatures are awesome in this deck, as are any cards that create Glimmer enchantment creature tokens. The blue-black deck is also an eerie deck, but encourages you to build around a more controlling game plan. The signpost uncommons are Fear of Infinity and Skullsnap Nuisance. Fear of Infinity is a flying enchantment creature that provides a nice life total buffer while being impossible to remove permanently without exile-based removal. Skullsnap Nuisance provides passive card selection whenever you trigger Eerie, all while carrying a big flying butt. Much of what I said about the blue-white deck also applies to the blue-black deck, though with a greater focus on prolonging the game. Glimmerburst, for example, triggers Eerie at instant speed, while also drawing you 2 cards. Enchantment-based removal like Nowhere to Run and Unable to Scream are also excellent in this deck. The white-black deck is a slow reanimator deck. There are lots of great big creatures to dump into your graveyard and then reanimate in this format, including one of the signpost uncommons, Shroud Stomper. There are also multiple reanimation spells at common and uncommon, including, you guessed it, one of the signpost uncommons, Rite of the Moth, a card that's reminiscent of one of my favorite cards ever, Unburial Rites. You'll need enough discard outlets and other enablers to consistently get your big guys into the graveyard. Commune with Evil is fantastic in the deck, keeping your life total buffered while potentially finding you both a reanimation spell and a reanimation target all in a single card. Cynical Loner is also a great card for this deck. If you can force her through combat, she will entome your best reanimation target. She can even go search up Rite of the Moth if you don't have a reanimation spell already in hand. The red-white deck is an aggro deck that rewards you for putting creatures in play that have 2 power or less. The signpost uncommons, Arabella Abandoned Doll and Midnight Mayhem, both contribute to that game plan by adding 1 power creatures to the board. Because so many decks in this format build toward very powerful late games, this deck is under a lot of pressure to pressure opponents quickly. Veteran Survivor is one of the most important uncommons for this deck, putting 2 power into play on turn 1 and helping to keep opposing graveyard strategies in check. The blue-red deck is a controlling deck that cares about putting a lot of rooms in play. I have to say, it's refreshing to see an Izzet limited deck that's not a Spells Matter deck. The signpost uncommons are Intruding Soul Ranger and Smoky Lounge Misty Salon. Intruding Soul Ranger can cash in your rooms for fresh cards and some damage after you've gotten what you need from them. Smoky Lounge provides mana to cast and unlock rooms, while Misty Salon creates a flying threat with power and toughness toughness equal to the number of unlocked doors among rooms you control. The rooms deck likely wants as many copies of Pyroclasm as it can get its hands on to stymie your opponent's assault and give you time to let your room's built-in card advantage take over the game. The blue-green deck is a dedicated Manifest Dread deck. The Signpost Uncommons are Growing Dread and Oblivious Bookworm, both fantastic 2-mana plays. This deck takes an already powerful mechanic and offers additional rewards for pulling it off. What's not to like? Paranormal Analyst is another fantastic 2-drop for this deck, effectively turning each instance of Manifest Dread into fully fledged card advantage, while also blocking the many 2-power aggressive creatures quite nicely. Last but certainly not least, the black-green deck is a grindy Delirium deck. The Signpost Uncommons, Brood Spinner, and Drag to the Roots are both fantastic. Brood Spinner would still be a good card if it was just a 2-mana 2/3 reach creature that surveilled 2 when it entered, but the fact that it can turn itself into a swarm of insects in the late game makes it extremely powerful. Drag to the Roots is just great all-purpose removal. Say its name as a premium card in this deck for enabling Delirium, even if you're unable to draft an Altanok or open one in your sealed pool. A good mana base is the foundation of every good limited deck. If your deck doesn't have good mana, you'll lose games due to mana screw or color screw that you would have otherwise won. Fortunately, there's a ton of excellent color fixing in this format, even outside of green decks. The color cycle of lands, the 13 lands, are excellent mana fixers and should be readily available in your draft. The basic land cyclers are not particularly strong cards, but they do fix your mana and provide you with a bit of flood protection, so you'll usually run up to one of each of your colors if you can pick them up late game. Keys to the House and Terramorphic Expanse can go in virtually any deck and have the added bonus of helping with Delirium for decks that care about that. In green, there's a ridiculous amount of fixing as well. The best of these at lower rarities are Overgrown Zealot, Spin Seeker Centipede, Moldering Gym, House Cartographer, and Threats Around Every Corner. These cards are worth taking highly, as green is a good color and will surely be hotly contested. Unlike Bloomburrow, this is a format where splashing other colors is encouraged. That said, you should still only do so if you have good reason, such as for a bomb, especially one with only 1 pip of off-color mana required, or for cross-archetype synergy. Some notable cross-archetype synergies are white-black and black-green to combine Reanimator with Delirium, blue-green and black-green to combine Manifest Dread with Delirium, red-green and black-green for Delirium, white-blue and blue-black for Eerie, white-blue and blue-red for Rooms plus Eerie, which you can also do with blue-red and blue-black. Keep in mind that this is not an exhaustive list. This is a well-designed limited environment with plenty of sideways synergies to keep an eye out for. Honestly, there's enough good mana fixing and the format seems slow enough that it would not surprise me at all if a 4 or even 5 color green deck was one of the best things you can do in this format, especially in sealed. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you have at least 4 or 5 pieces of 5 color fixing. That is, the cards that tutor for any basic land and cards that tap for mana of any color. If you're a newer player who doesn't feel confident splashing other colors in your limited deck, that's okay. When in doubt, you're better off sticking to a 2-color deck, even in a set with plenty of mana fixing. Mana fixing is still good in 2-color decks after all. Duskmourn Limited looks like it'll be a fun and intricate limited environment. That said, there are 3 distinct aspects to this format: graveyard synergies, enchantment synergies, and the threat of survival. I'll talk about each of these aspects one at a time and how they should impact your approach to the format. Graveyard synergies exist in every color in Duskmourn thanks to the prevalence of Delirium and Reanimator cards. Graveyard decks imply a slower, grindy metagame, as it takes some time to stock up your graveyard. Once graveyard decks reach the late game, they tend to have a lot of inevitability. As is often true for dedicated graveyard formats, there isn't all that much graveyard hate readily accessible at lower rarities. The best way to counteract graveyard decks in this format is with early pressure paired with exile-based removal. There's actually plenty of the latter in this format, and I'll talk about a few of them in just a moment. There are 78 enchantments in Duskmourn, a lot more than most Magic sets. It therefore won't be hard to find ways to trigger your eerie cards if you go looking for them. The prevalence of enchantments means that disenchant effects are often worth main boarding. More on that in just a moment as well. The existence of survival creatures means you absolutely cannot ignore combat, even if you aren't an aggro deck. If you keep a slow hand, you run the risk of getting buried in value by your aggressive green and white opponents. Cheap removal is at a premium, as are blockers that can trade with your opponent's survival creatures. Survival creatures also mean that combat tricks are a lot better in Duskmourn than they are in other formats, as these can make the difference between your survival creature surviving combat and not. Your opponents are more likely to run headfirst into your combat tricks as they try to trade with your survival cards in combat. One more thing about this metagame, there are a couple of relevant toughnesses to watch out for when building your deck. 2 toughness creatures will be running rampant thanks to Manifest Dread, so cards like Winter's Intervention will be better here than in other formats. Winter's Intervention also provides insulation against that early survival onslaught I mentioned. The other relevant toughness to watch for is 4, as 4+ toughness creatures outlive 2 of the best removal spells in the format, Scorching Dragonfire and Nowhere to Run. Good removal you might miss. Everyone knows that cards like Murder and Scorching Dragonfire are great in limited, but there are some other good removal spells that might not catch your eye at first glance. Exercise is an easy removal spell to overlook, but it's actually very good in most white decks. Exile-based removal is great in a format that cares about the graveyard. This hits 133 different cards, 65% of all non-land permanents in Duskmourn. Some notable cards it removes are all the Enduring cards permanently, all the Overlords, and of course every room. Cathartic Parting is cheap and hits all 111 artifacts and enchantments that don't have hexproof, many of which are creatures. Almost every deck will have targets for this card. If you have 2 copies of Cathartic Parting, you can use them to shuffle each other back into your deck so as to never deck out, providing inevitability in a long game. Speaking of unable to scream, this is one of the strongest versions of this effect that we've ever seen. It's only 1 mana, it removes abilities, and it makes the creature useless for anything other than chump blocking. It also prevents players from turning their manifested creatures face up. Now I'd like to go over some of the bombs that I recommend keeping an eye out for when drafting or building your sealed deck. Put simply, if you're lucky enough to open a bomb or be past one, your deck will be better for it. But you need to be able to recognize bombs when you open them. And there are a ton of bombs in this set, so what I'm going to do is only talk about the best, about 1 or 2 for each color. If you open a white mythic rare, congratulations! You've opened one of the best cards in Duskmourn. That's because every white mythic is fantastic and worthy of your first pick, though Overlord of the Mistmoors is perhaps the absolute best overall card in the set. Another great white bomb is Ghostly Dancers, a fantastic flyer that dodges a lot of the set's removal and provides a ton of value from the moment it comes down. In blue, Overlord of the Flood Pits is the best rare, a powerful evasive flyer that repeatedly draws you cards and can even help set up your graveyard synergies. Its downside is its toughness, as it's vulnerable to both Scorching Dragonfire and Nowhere to Run on top of nearly every other good removal spell in the set. Fortunately, blue is also the color of counter magic, so plan to pick up a copy or 2 of Twist Reality or Fear of Imposters to help protect your bomb from removal. These 3-mana counterspells are good, not great, but they get a lot better when you've got a 5/3 flyer in play that repeatedly draws you fresh cards. In black, the face card of the set, Valgavoth, Terror Eater, is an incredibly strong card once it's in play, but 9 mana is too much to cast in most games of Limited. The solution? Reanimated, of course. Valgavoth is a great card to first pick, but you should consider it a black-white-gold card rather than an ordinary black rare. Overlord of the Boiler Bilges is the best red card in the set. Of all the Overlords, this has the least mana efficient impend cost for what you get out of the effect, but the full retail mode is well costed to 2-for-1 your opponent at a minimum, and it only gets worse for them if you're able to untap with it. Green is actually my pick for the best color in all of Duskmourn, so you should be thrilled if you open a great green rare. Valgavoth's Onslaught is the best of the bunch, creating a board full of big creatures while also filling your graveyard to help with Delirium. Do your best to cast this for X equaling 2 or more to get as much value as you can out of this card. I also love Tyvar the Pummeler. He's a hard card to kill as he can give himself indestructible at instant speed if you have a spare untapped creature to tap to his ability. In the late game, his mana sink ability will break through board stalls and threaten to one-hit kill your opponent. Remember, you can activate his indestructible ability even if he's already tapped. This is a great way to trigger survival on a creature that you don't want to risk in combat. What about gold bombs? Well, first picking a gold card can be a risk in Limited, since these are the most restrictive cards you can start your draft with. That said, it's still worth doing if the card you're picking is strong enough. Nico, Light of Hope, and the Swarm Weaver are both examples of this. These are two powerful bombs that are absolutely worth starting your draft in their respective two-color pairs right off the bat. Bonus sheet Special Guests. Special Guests will not play a very big role in Duskmourn Limited, but I do want to highlight Damnation and Phantasmal Image as two of the best cards on the bonus sheet. If you have an option to build your deck using either one of these cards, you should probably do so. Damnation in particular is a fantastic limited card that I would argue you should even first pick if you open in a draft. And there you have it, everything you need to know to succeed in the first couple weeks of Duskmourn Limited. Remember, you can always watch our complete new player's guide to both sealed and draft by clicking on the appropriate videos here or linked in this video's description. And remember, you can't play in a pre-release or participate in a draft at Target or Walmart, and certainly not on Amazon.com, so when it is possible and when it is reasonable to do so, try and spend your money on Magic where you spend time playing Magic, and that's at your local game store. You're supporting your Magic community when you do.
Ooh, next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
Today! I don't know what's going to happen today because Wubby wouldn't tell me.
We will be opening a sealed beta booster pack.
Sorry, I had to touch it. I just wanted to touch it.
Unsearched, so this could have a Lotus.
Whoa.
For the winner.
For me.
Slayer! Stronghold. Slay!
It's the boomer screaming slave for me.
Stop calling me a boomer.
Block your Ocelot Pride.
Why are you tapping to block? Actually, can we see that again in slow motion?
By the way, Prof, you missed your Mana Crypt trigger.
By the way, go to hell. Lua, that was very dank of you.
Dank and slay the house down.
Now you sound like a parent. You're aging.
I'm getting
You're
there.
getting older
Yeah,
and
I'm
more
getting there.
cringe. And not the good kind of cringe like Wubby.
What the hell? What a drive-by!